Just before this episode, here's how you can get more from Never a Truer Word. If you're listening to this podcast on Spotify, you can subscribe to this channel to get early access to the weekly analysis episodes, video episodes so you can see the statements as I analyze them, and exclusive content too. And if you're here on YouTube, then become a member of the channel to get early access to everything and exclusive content not available anywhere else. Hello and welcome to Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If in case you haven't guessed, this is all about the words. This is all about actively listening to what people say to get a steer on what they're really saying and what is going on with them. So this guy, he is the husband of a recently murdered woman. And when he stands up in front of the press and says this...
What are you going through right now? I mean, today, right now?
Well, I don't want to do interviews, okay? I just want to make a statement. Is that all right?
He goes on to give that statement and then gives an interview. That's going to be gold dust to listen to because he hasn't prepared for it. It's unguarded. And that's when we can learn the most about what's really going on with someone. And what's going on when he says something like this?
We've been together for 20 years. Over the 20 years, you know, our relationship evolved from this to that, to this to that. And we've managed to keep it, you know, held together all this time.
We'll dig into that in this episode. We're dealing with an unsolved murder here. 2016 unsolved murder of Missy Beavers in Texas. Missy was killed early one morning when she was setting up for a class in a local church, and there's some very eerie CCTV of someone prowling that church before Missy arrived wearing what looks like a police outfit. And this is Brandon Bevers. This is Missy's husband. This is him talking to the press, giving a statement, and then giving an interview. This was sent to me by a listener. Thank you so much for sending this my way. DM'd me on Instagram, sent me a link to a YouTube video which I watched, and I thought, yeah, there's definitely something in this. And then I looked at the comments on YouTube. Let's look at them. This was one day after his wife's murder. He's not even pretending to be sad. Wow, it's so painfully obvious he did this. Someone else saying something isn't right here. Someone else saying very methodical and businesslike. The majority of the comments under that YouTube were suspicious of Brandon Bevers. So let's look at his words and let's see what we can get from them. And let's look at some things in particular. His focus. What is he focused on during this interview? What does your gut instinct tell you? All too often we get a gut instinct from someone's words and we rationalize them away and say, nah, I'm being unfair on the person. But listen to your gut as you go through this. And what themes are important to Brandon? That is, what things does he mention constantly or mention a lot? That will reveal so much to us. So are we ready? Let's listen to Brandon. This is him finishing up the statement and then answering questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess this is your last time. You're not going to speak again after this. Is that correct? This is what you...
I really don't. I mean, I don't want to, you know, in terms of, you know, in terms of obtaining a story to pull at heartstrings and stuff like that, I'm not looking here for the media to sensationalize a tragedy, okay? My family needs, we need our privacy, and that's why I wanted to do this in one time only. But we need our privacy. I haven't had a lot of sleep. I haven't had a lot of one-on-one time with my children. I just have some issues that I need to deal with on a personal level with my children. I want to reach out to the Camp Gladiator, the campers that she mentored, and I want to talk to those folks and express you know, my appreciation for their admiration of my wife. Okay?
So he says there that he gives his reasons for not wanting to talk. He's asked, you're not going to speak after this, is that correct? He says, I really don't. I mean, I don't want to, you know, in terms of obtaining a story to pull at the heartstrings and stuff like that. I'm not looking here for the media to sensationalize a tragedy. Okay. So First of all, look at how in the negative this is. This is him telling us what he doesn't want to do. I really don't want to talk. I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't. I'm not looking here for the media to sensationalize a tragedy. So he's really focused here on what it is that he doesn't want to do. Interesting. He's coming at it from a very negative place. And he's saying, I don't want to talk again after this, which is actually clear. And also, fair enough, it's up to him whether he talks or not. And he outlines what it is and why it is that he doesn't want to talk. I don't want to talk in terms of obtaining a story to pull at the heartstrings. Now, you might find that odd, but at least he is telling us about that. You might think that the husband, Brandon here, of the recently murdered Missy, would want to pull at people's heartstrings to make people feel guilty or to get people working to recollect or share any knowledge that they have. He doesn't want to do that for some reason, but he's also telling us outright he doesn't want them obtaining a story to pull at the heartstrings, and he's not looking here for the media to sensationalize a tragedy. Some things about that are interesting. He talks about he doesn't want in terms of obtaining a story. He's basically saying there he doesn't want you guys to obtain a story. Now that suggests to me that there is a story to obtain. Yeah, because if it was constructing a story or fabricating a story, there would be no story there. You would be making one up. But here he talks about obtaining a story. That's very interesting to me. What is the story that he thinks can be obtained? Because the word obtain is suggesting that there is a story they could obtain. That is, there is a story they could get, but he doesn't want to give them that story. He talks about what's happened as a tragedy. Now, that's quite a vivid description. So quite often guilty people, suspicious people will play down the severity of some of the things that have happened. That's not what I see happening here. He describes it as a tragedy, but it is actually a tragedy. No ownership there, no personalization there. It's not the tragic death of my wife or the tragedy that's come across this family or anything like that. It is just that slightly more jealous, a tragedy. In fact, he's not looking here for the media to sensationalize a tragedy. Now, that could be any tragedy. He may be referring to the tragedy that's happened to his family, but he's distancing himself from what has actually happened there, taking no ownership. He says, my family we need our privacy. And that's why I wanted to do this one time only, but we need our privacy. So he's mentioned privacy twice there. We need our privacy. We need our privacy. So privacy of something that is very important to him. And once again, he's being overt about this. He is being open about what he wants. Even if that is he wants not to have to be open, he wants to be closed. He is saying, we need our privacy. I'm interested in who needs the privacy. My family needs, and then we need. My family might not include him. My family might be slightly wider. Our family would be maybe a bit more joined up, but then it's we need. So definitely he's part of we. So definitely he wants privacy. And if you'll notice this first answer, he talks about himself a lot here. Now, to be fair, the question is about him. It was, you're not going to talk, is that correct? But he talks about himself a lot. And one of the things he said straight out the bat is, I haven't had a lot of sleep. I haven't had a lot of one-on-one time with my children. So he's very concerned about himself. And that's maybe a bit surprising when his wife has been killed. His kids have no mother anymore. He's very concerned with himself and the amount of sleep he had. But again, this could be honest. He's telling us about what he hasn't had. And by default, he needs that there. But he's very, very concerned with himself. This was an interesting part. He said, I just have some issues that I need to deal with on a personal level with my children. Now, he's got the word just in there. I heard the word just, and that always puts me on alert for what's really happening here, because just is a minimizer. Quite often when someone says they just have something, there's a lot more going on. There's a lot more than the thing that they just have going on, but they only want us to focus on that one thing. So he's trying to minimize it and make it sound small here. It's just something. It's very, very small, and it's actually quite big. I just have some issues. I'll notice that it's I have some issues. So it's not the family in general that he's saying have the issues, or other people, or there are issues with the children or anything like that. These are his issues. He's taking ownership of them. I have some issues. And he says, I need to deal with them on a personal level. So this is all about him. This is right inside him, these issues. He doesn't expand on what they are. Now, we know one of his issues is his wife has just been murdered, but he's talking about that, but he isn't saying it is about that. There is something else going on here that he doesn't want to expand on, these issues that he's trying to make sound really small and really simple and minimizing with the just owning himself. He has some issues. And by the way, did you notice he says, I have some issues in the plural, therefore more than one issue. Now, I know if your wife's been murdered, there's a lot going to be going on with you. But here he is saying, I have some issues in the plural. So there's a lot going on with this guy, and he doesn't want to share it with us. He's very buttoned down, very locked up, isn't he? He's really not letting us in on his world whatsoever. It's about privacy. I need time to deal with this on a personal level. I have some issues, but I'm not going to tell you what these things are. I'm not going to help you sensationalize the tragedy. You're not going to obtain a story as well. So he's very buttoned down. He's very, very closed off. He then goes on to say, I want to reach out to the Camp Gladiator. Now, I think that was the camp, that was a class that Missy was preparing and has been running for some time at the time of her death. I want to reach out to the Camp Gladiator, the campers that she mentored, and I want to talk to those folks and express, my appreciation for their admiration of my wife. Okay? Now, he was very stuttery in the middle here. He said, I want to talk to those folks and express, my appreciation. Does he want to express his appreciation? He wanted to reach out to the people, and then he has trouble finding the words to use to say why he wants to reach out to those people. He's quite clear there. It's no stuttery when it's, I want to reach out to the Camp Gladiator, the campers that she mentored, and I want to talk to those folks. No stutters there. But then when he goes on to express what it is he wants to say to those folks, and express, my appreciation for their admiration of my wife. I wonder if there's something else he wants to say to some of these Camp Gladiator people. So far in that one answer, he's expressed lots of don't wants and some specific wants as well. So the don't wants, he doesn't want to sensationalize this. He doesn't want to give them a story. He really doesn't want to talk. And he has said that this is an answer to the question, I don't want to talk. He does want privacy, and he wants to talk to the Camp Gladiator people. That's the first thing he had to say. Here's the next question that he was asked.
Your wife was a mother and a woman who touched so many lives through her work.
Correct. You are correct.
And that's why, we want to share her story. And you know that better than anyone.
Correct.
You knew her better than anyone. The kind of woman she was, the kind of mother she was.
Well, she was a very good mother. She spent, I'll go a little further here. When Missy, before we had children, Missy was a teacher, public school teacher. She worked with special needs children, and she did that for about 2 years. And I could see the amount of outpouring in her soul to help needy people. Okay, and especially at that time, it was special needs children. And then we had children. She stayed at home, raised our children, and when she got back into the workforce, or when time allowed her to do things for herself, she found Camp Gladiator. And through raising our 3 children, she transformed into a different physically person, a mother, but she decided to become physically fit, and for a 40-some-odd-year-old mother of 3, she was very fit and transformed on an unimaginable level. Her body pretty well sold her abilities in transforming and helping other people. And but she was very passionate about helping these people, and I would catch some of her campers' remarks on her Facebook page about how excited they were of the results that they've seen through her efforts, and I'm proud of her. We're very proud of her.
I said at the start of this episode, when someone talks when they're not prepared to say the words that they're going to say, they're in free flow, it can be very revealing, and that is what that answer was, I believe. The question at the very beginning of that, you know her better than anyone, the kind of woman she was, the kind of mother she was. So he's asked two parts to the question, what kind of woman Missy was and what kind of mother Missy was. And interestingly, he doesn't deal with the woman part first, he deals with the mother part first. And he says she was a very good mother, and then goes on to talk more about the woman. So he goes straight to very good mother. No, he says she was a very good mother, so he's talking about her in the past tense. And as we watch and listen to a bit more of this, he flips between past and present tense to refer to Missy. That's entirely natural. She is recently dead, will not be fully processed in his mind. So he will sometimes refer to her in past tense, sometimes refer to her in present tense, like he does there, saying she was a good mother in the past tense. She was a very good mother. Now, that's positive. You know, saying someone is a very good mother is positive, but it's not very effusive, is it? It's two words to describe Missy as a mother. And then he uses a lot more words to describe Missy when she was a teacher, before she had children. So there's those two words, very good mother, and then lots and lots of words talking about Missy being a teacher with special needs children. Why is that? Why is he very guarded about her being a very good mother? He does say, when Missy, before we had children, Missy was a teacher, so he calls her Missy twice. Now, that's good. That shows some closeness. Missy wasn't actually her given name. I think Terry might have been her given name. Missy was a sort of name that she went by, and he's using that name. So that suggests there is some closeness or fondness between them there. Not always the case between a husband and a wife, by the way, but he is not referring to her with the slightly more distant terms like she. It's Missy, which is great. I said he was buttoned down. He realises that and says out loud, she was a very good mother. She spent, I'll go a little further here, when Missy, before we had children, and then goes on to talk about Missy being a teacher. He actually is saying, I've not been going far here. I've been keeping myself locked down. I've been keeping myself boxed up. I've been keeping things away from you. But on this one, because you're asking about what kind of woman she was, I'm going to go a little further here. I'm going to open myself up a little bit more. When he talks about her being a teacher, he says, I could see the amount of outpouring in her soul. Now, with so many things, when Brandon talks about Missy, there are words there that could be glorious words, but come across slightly flat. I could see the amount of outpouring in her soul. He could just see it. He didn't enjoy it. It didn't mean anything to him. He could just see it. Was there some sort of rancor there, some sort of disdain for the outpouring in her soul, because there's not a lot there to say that he thinks that the outpouring in her soul to help these children was a good thing. He continues and he says, and then we had children. She stayed at home, raised our children, and when she got back into the workforce, or when time allowed her to do things for herself, she found Camp Gladiator. And even though raising her 3 children, she transformed into a different physically person, a mother, but she decided to become physically fit. And for a 40-some-odd-year-old mother of 3, she was very fit and transformed on an unimaginable level. She was her body pretty well sold her abilities in transforming and helping people. He talks a lot there about transformation. She transformed into a different physically person. She transformed on an unimaginable level, and her abilities in transforming and helping people. So transformation is a big thing for him. And I've got to say, I don't think he thinks this transformation was a positive thing. Because once again, he's quite flat in the words that he uses to describe this. It's just a transformation. He focuses a lot in this transformation on her body, her physicality. She became a different physically person. She became physically fit. She was very fit, and her body sold her abilities, which is very, very unusual way for a husband to describe his wife, because that is kind of put her in a box here about this transformation from whatever she was before. He doesn't say what she was before, but she obviously wasn't fit and potentially did not have a body that would sell the abilities in transforming and helping people. I don't know what was there before, but really I'm spotting something here about this transformation. Was he against this transformation? Was he not a fan of this transformation that Missy had? Certainly, the way he mentions transformation a lot, the way he mentions the way her body changed, suggests to me not a fan of it. He talks again about her being a mother, but again, in very limited terms. She stayed at home, raised her children. She was raising her 3 children. She was a mother. That doesn't sound like the full all the things that motherhood can be, does it? From the joys, the nurturing, the fact you could raise great children, a great mother would raise great children, the children would be a credit to her, and so on. Again, he's very locked down about all of this. She stayed at home, raised her children, raised her 3 children, talks about her being a mother, and then once again, this is all out of balance. So many more words talking about the transformation, talking about her going back to work, finding Camp Gladiator, and then this physical transformation to become physically fit. She was very fit and transformed on an unimaginable level. So the motherhood stuff is very, very locked down, very non-descriptive, and he spends a lot more time talking about the transformation. Another thing that makes me think, was he fully on board with this transformation? Did he back it? He talks about Missy transforming and helping other people. That's the second time we've seen this concept of her helping other people around. He talked about Missy helping the special needs children as well. So I think he definitely saw Missy as helping other people. And you'll notice that she is raising the children, but helping other people. Did he think? And again, look at how guarded he is, how flat he is around Missy as a mother. Did he think Missy spent too much time externally helping other people and not enough time on her own family? These words would suggest that. Bit of a strange phrasing, talking about Missy going back to work. When she got back into the workforce, almost like a phrase a boss of a company would use, or an economist or something like that, rather than a husband who, when she went back to work, when she found a new career, no, she got back into the workforce. At the very least, a very formal way of describing your wife's return to work. But I do not know anything about Brandon Bevers. Maybe he is an economist, maybe he is an employer or something like that, and workforce is a big concept in his head, but it's just a very strange way of describing your wife's return to work. We can see as well, and again, a lot of these things I'm pointing out are about learning about the relationship between the two of them, about learning about Brandon, about learning about Missy. We can see she decided to become physically fit. So once more, this transformation was about her, wasn't it? She decided to do it. It was under her own initiative, this decision to become physically fit. He certainly was not part of it. He's not joined himself in there at all. So he wasn't getting fit with her, which is fair enough. But we can deduce that from this. But very much it was she decided to become physically fit. Again, was this decision something he was fully on board with, or is there a bit of resentment there about the way she went out and got a new life for herself? There's more. He said she transformed on an unimaginable level. Now, that's a strange way of describing it, because it happened. It was real. The transformation was real. He's spoken about seeing it. So it's not unimaginable, is it? It's very much manageable, or it is imaginable because he has seen it. But he's saying it was on an unimaginable level. So when was it unimaginable? Was it when she started off doing it? Did he doubt her ability to go on this journey from being the unfit mother of 3 into this person who was physically fit for their age and a body that sold their abilities? Did he doubt her at the time? And again, I just pick up so much resentment around this transformation. I don't think he liked it at all. He said that she was very passionate about helping these people. We've got that concept of helping people again, and her being passionate about helping these people. He puts a but at the beginning of it, but she was very passionate about helping these people, which means it's a big priority. So all these things happened but this happened. And his focus is there. The but can be a little bit negative as well when it's used there. It's like, but she was very passionate about helping these people. Interesting. This is also interesting. I would catch some of her campers' remarks on her Facebook page. Catch, a word that makes it sound kind of casual. I just caught some of that. I just caught some of those remarks. Was it as casual as that? Is he using that casually? Was he snooping on her Facebook page? Was he looking jealously or enviously at what was on her Facebook page and some of these campers' remarks? Or was he snooping? Was he going round having a look at this? It certainly, I would suggest something there. I mean, look, it certainly says that Missy has not talked about the remarks on the Facebook page with Brendan. She hasn't been very proud of them. She hasn't wanted to share them and go, oh, look at the feedback I've got, or look at these remarks. That doesn't seem to have happened at all. It's he would catch some of them, and catch, I think he's trying to make it more casual than it really was. I do wonder, was he snooping on her? Again, did he have some issues with what she was doing with this camp? I think he might have. But here, he finally gets some emotion out and talks about her being passionate about helping these people. Here's some more from Brandon.
She meant a lot of things to a lot of people. What did she mean, though, to you as her husband?
Well, she was a companion. We enjoyed fishing. We enjoyed going to the beach. We spent a lot of time at the ocean. We've been together for 20 years. And over the 20 years, our relationship evolved from this to that to this to that, and we've managed to keep it, held together all this time. But at this particular venture in our lives, it opened up an opportunity for her to do something that was gratifying to herself, rather than raising a family, constantly driving kids around. And she's just, like I said, the Camp Gladiator opportunity came up, and
Right. More revealing things here. He's asked, she meant a lot of things to a lot of people. What did she mean, though, to you as a husband? And he starts his answer with, well, she was a companion. We enjoyed fishing. We enjoyed going to the beach. We spent a lot of time at the ocean. We've been together for 20 years, over 20 years. This is seriously flat. There is nothing in there about meaning. It's about doing. We've been together. We enjoyed the beach, spent a lot of time at the ocean. She was a companion is the first thing that he says. When asked, what did your wife mean to you? She was a companion. That's not a wife's sole biggest role, is it? A companion. It's a very interesting description of a relationship here. We'll see he's got that mixture of past and present tense. She was a companion. We enjoyed fishing. We enjoyed going to the beach. We spent a lot of time together at the ocean, so past tense. And then he moves into present tense. We've been together for 20 years. We've managed to keep it, held together all this time. So he has not processed the death yet, because he's talking about her sometimes in the past tense and sometimes in the present tense. He has asked, what did she mean to you, though, as a husband? And I don't really get much meaning apart from we spent some time together. And he talks about our relationship evolved. Now, remember that transformation? Well, evolved again is very much like transformation, isn't it? And again, he's just this locked down guy who's not going to share too much. And he said, I don't want to share too much. Our relationship evolved from this to that, to this to that. No expansion on what went on there. But they've definitely had a changing relationship over the time. And again, we've managed to keep it, held together all this time. Now that suggests some strains in that marriage, some strains and some forces pulling them apart, and they've managed to hold it together all this time. Certainly there, nothing a feeling of a flourishing relationship, a relationship that is transformed for the better. It has just evolved, very much like the transformation. It's not really a transformation for the better. It's that. And from this to that, this to that suggests some real rocky roads that these guys have been down. He doesn't want to expand on it too much, but again, He's talking unprepared about this, and we're getting so much about the relationship between Missy and Brandon. He says, Aaron, but this particular venture in her lives, it opened up an opportunity for her to do something that was gratifying to herself. At this particular venture in her lives. Now listen, I think that's a misspeak. I think he meant juncture. At this juncture in our lives, that would be the normal phrase. That'd be the thing we expect to hear. But he doesn't say juncture, he says venture. Could just be a misspeak. It could mean nothing. But very often, when there is a misspeak, it reveals a lot. It's the kind of word that we actually had in our head, or one of the words we were thinking about, or one of the concepts we were thinking about as these words were coming to our mouth, and our brain, boom, sticks that word that we're thinking about rather than the one we want to say there. So did he see this as a venture that was going on? Could be. Look, he says it's in our lives. Now that's interesting. It's a venture in our lives. Joined up there, that pronoun our. It's not an adventure or a venture in her life, in Missy's life, but it was in our lives, which suggests that actually there may be something going on between the two of them. I've seen so much rockiness in the relationship. I've seen maybe resentment about this transformation, but there's something to hold on to, that it was a venture in our lives. And she found the opportunity to do something that was gratifying to herself rather than raising a family. So that's a comparison there, a comparison between what she was doing, which was gratifying to herself rather than raising a family. The implication there is that she did not find raising a family gratifying to herself. So again, what's going on there is he's some doubts about her ability or commitment as a mother. I mean, these are what I am seeing in the words that are there, and something gratifying to herself. So again, I get the impression that he just wasn't really on board with this direction that she was taking in life. Look at the description of raising a family. We've had the words raising a family a few times from Brandon, not the most joyous and uplifting way of describing having children and raising them and nurturing. He just uses the word raising a family. And the first thing he can think of about raising a family is constantly driving kids around. And then we've got that word rather. So what she was doing at the camp was much more gratifying rather than this really mundane stuff, raising a family and constantly driving kids around. He mentions Camp Gladiator again. Now, in any of the questions, he's not been asked about Camp Gladiator, but he's mentioned it 3 times now, and he's brought it up when he hasn't been asked about it. So Camp Gladiator, the class that Missy was preparing for on the day that she was killed, seems to be a real source in his head of priority thought, that Camp Gladiator was something that bugs him, something that he wasn't quite on board with, maybe. I mean, certainly it's just a priority thought in his head. He keeps mentioning it. You know, here he was asked, what did she mean to you as a husband? And he finishes his answer by talking about Camp Gladiator. So I think some real worry, some real irritation there about Camp Gladiator for some reason. We're going to look at more of Brandon in a minute, including this interesting piece.
I would have to say that Missy is unlike most people, is unlike any other spouse, wife, friend, mother.
What do you think I'm going to say about that? You'll find out soon. Don't forget, if you want to get extra from Never a Truer Word, if you want to get exclusive content and episodes like this before they are released, you can be a subscriber on Spotify if that's where you're listening, or if you're watching on YouTube, then you become a member of the channel. I found another interview with Brandon where he talks about how it felt to be treated as a suspect in the murder of his wife, and I'm going to release that very shortly as a bonus members or subscribers on Spotify only bit of content. So if you want more Brandon, that's what you should be doing. You can subscribe to the channel here on YouTube if you want to get notifications of when new episodes like this happen. Always interested in your comments or your suggestions. Like this came to me from someone who enjoys the content here. If there's anything you think I should be looking at, then drop that in the comments or get in touch on social media. And if nothing else, you could press the like button, because let me tell you, this guy is so closed off. This has taken hours of analysis to get something that I feel truly gets to what is going on with Brandon and his feelings around Missy and his feelings around the murder. Hours and hours of analysis to pull this together. The like button will not take you hours and hours to press, just a little tiny thing to press the like button. If you do that, it helps this get to more people, and I would be extremely grateful. Let's get on with listening to Brandon, and this is him continuing to take questions and answers from the press.
She was so well loved. Are you racking your brain to say who would want to hurt such a beautiful person?
Yes, I mean, it's, you know, this world is full of evil people. I don't know, without going into any details that I've spoke with law enforcement, I mean, yeah, we're talking about a senseless act here, okay?
Did you look at the video to see if you saw anybody, recognized anything about it?
The same video that I watched on a continuous loop. It's the same video that you guys have already had access to.
Click anything for you?
Nothing clicks. I can't tell if the person is a man or a woman. The police estimate that he's about 6 foot tall. This person's 6 foot tall. But if you look at the mannerisms of the person, how they walk, I mean, there's something very distinctive there that somebody has to be able to point this out.
Okay, so he's asked more questions about his wife, Missy. She was so well loved. Are you racking your brain to say who would want to hurt such a beautiful person? And he says yes. And that yes is very reassuring to me. Look, this is one of those questions where if you've got a guilty person up in front of you and they're answering that question, they're going to answer that in a very odd way of going, maybe storytelling, maybe some sort of denial. Here he answers yes straight away. Yes, he's confirming he is racking his brain. And he doesn't downplay what has happened. He mentions that this is an evil thing, and he mentions it's a senseless act as well. So he's not downplaying what has happened or the barbarity, the evilness of the person that did it. Or is he? Because actually he mentions evil, but he says this world is full of evil people. And he mentions it being a senseless act. He says we're talking about a senseless act here. He's created a bit of distance here. He doesn't come out full on and say it was an evil person that did this. I don't know who did this to my wife, but this was an evil person. Doesn't go that close to it whatsoever. He just spouts a general fact. This world is full of evil people. So he does mention evil, but he's got a bit of distance there. And he says we're talking about a senseless act there, okay? So again, it's not direct condemnation. This was a senseless act. We're talking about a senseless act here. So he is making himself slightly distant here. We've got a common theme of this interview, him saying what he's not going to say. Without going into any details that I spoke with law enforcement is what he says. Without going into any details that I spoke with law enforcement. So he's telling us, he's being very upfront with us. He's not hiding things away. He's not trying to hope that we're not going to ask about this. He's telling us upfront, look, details I've spoken about with law enforcement, I'm not going to go into them. So I think on that YouTube comments where some people said he was very suspicious, and there are some things that maybe would raise suspicions there, but I think the fact that he appears to be hiding something with some of the things he says, it's fine to get that appearance that he could be hiding something, but he is always upfront about what he is hiding and mostly why he is hiding it. Just like here, I'm not going to go into any details I spoke with law enforcement about. He's asked, did you look at the video to see if anybody recognised anything about it? And he says, the same video that I watched in a continuous loop. It's the same video you guys have already access to. That's not really answering the question, is it? That's getting across how much he watched the video. He doesn't say, yeah, I did watch the video to see if I recognised anybody, and I didn't recognise anybody or didn't recognise anything about it. He wants to get across that he watched this video non-stop. I watched on a continuous loop. He's asked, did this click anything for you? He says, nothing clicks. So now he is directly answering the question. Then he goes into a bit more expansive mode of, I can't tell if the person is a man or a woman, but the police estimate that he's about 6 foot tall, or this person is 6 foot tall. So he's defaulted to saying it's not a man or a woman and then calling it he. Now, what's that about? Could just be the fact that, you know, in murders, it is more likely to be committed by a man. So we think, yeah, I can't tell if he is about 6 foot, but he corrects himself and says this person is 6 foot tall, but that using he first suggests that he thinks it's a man. But if you look at the mannerisms of the person, how they walk, I mean, there's something very distinctive there that somebody has to be able to point this out. Now that bit at the end, the mannerisms are very distinctive. There's something very distinctive there that somebody has to be able to point this out. Now, first listen, I thought what he was saying was the mannerisms are very distinctive. Someone must recognize them and be able to say, wow, that's the person, that person walks just like this person, or the mannerisms, the distinctiveness is someone there. I thought he was saying the mannerisms are so distinctive, people should watch this video and see if they recognize that person, or someone knows someone with those mannerisms. But no, he just wants somebody to be able to point this out. He's just pointed out that the mannerisms are very distinctive, but he doesn't want somebody to come forward and say, I recognize those mannerisms, or I realize those mannerisms belong to someone I know. He just wants someone to point out that the mannerisms are very distinctive. Interesting choice of words. But overall in that, once he's talked about watching it in a continuous loop, he's drawing people into the speculation. He's talking about what he doesn't know in his head and drawing people in to say, look, there is something very distinctive here about the person that's featured in the video. He's not avoiding it. He's not creating distance there. He's drawing people in to that part of Missy's story.
She posted on her Facebook that she was going to be there. Is that something that police have also looked into perhaps that they talked to you about?
Well, the date, time, and location of her camps are publicized. They're known. Those times and schedules are already predetermined. It definitely sets up an opportunity for the unknown to happen, particularly since she arrives there early before anybody else does. But if you look at the video, and I don't know how much of the video the police has released, but if you look at the video, and from what I understand, the perpetrator came through the back door, okay, and spent several minutes rummaging from room to room. If I'm not mistaken, he might have broke some glass in this room looking for something, broke some glass in this room looking for something, spent some time in the kitchen area. But by the time my wife arrived, I don't know of the video at that point, but according to the police, shortly after the altercation, needless to say, it's the opinion of the police department that the perpetrator didn't know the presence of my wife, or that she was going to be there. I think my wife walked in on a robbery. That's just an opinion. That's not fact.
Again, another revealing answer from Brendan. She posted on Facebook that she was going to be there. Was that something the police also looked into, perhaps, that they talked about? So there's a police aspect to this question. Was that something, the fact that her schedule was public, that the police also looked into? And in that answer, Brendan doesn't mention once the police. He goes on to talk about his theories, what he's spoken about with the police, maybe putting aside his point of view, but he doesn't talk about the police at all there. I found that interesting. He says it definitely sets up an opportunity for the unknown to happen. So the fact that the schedule was on Facebook definitely sets up an opportunity for the unknown to happen. So that means he's got that concept in his head that this could be a targeted attack, or this could be how a targeted attack could happen. Interesting use of the word unknown there. We know what happened. He doesn't say this set up an opportunity for someone to murder Missy if they so wanted to. It's just for the unknown to happen. He gets very formal again. He says, from what I understand, the perpetrator came through the back door. The perpetrator. So he's not referring to the person that killed his wife as the murderer, the killer, the attacker. It's the perpetrator. Interesting choice of words. What are the reasons for that? Well, it could be the softening and downplaying of language from a guilty person that we sometimes hear when a guilty person turns down the severity of what happened in their words. It could be, I don't know, is he ex-law enforcement, military, something like that, and perpetrator is more part of his regular language? Or could it be that he spent quite a lot of time with the police? Perpetrator is very much in police lingo. and that's rubbed off on him. I understand the perpetrator came through the back door. Okay. He then goes on to say, if I'm not mistaken, he might have broke some glass in this room. So once more, he's saying he thinks it's a he. I'm not saying he has inside information on what happened, but Brandon does think that the murderer of his wife was a man. Look at something else he does here. He really is caveating this up. If I'm not mistaken, i.e., what I'm going to say could be wrong. I think my wife walked in a robbery, so I think, again, it's an opinion. And then he does say at the end, that's just an opinion, that's not fact. So he's not trying to tell us much of this with any sense of certainty. He's very open to the fact that what he's saying is an opinion, not fact. Often, deceptive people will try and convince us using much more solid language and turning that solidity up even more by using persuasive language to make sure that we really get the picture that this is what happened. Here he's going, here's what could have happened. Here's what I think did happen in my opinion. Some more softening language or formal language. He calls what happened, the murder of his wife, an altercation. Now, how does he know there was an altercation? Altercation is a bit of an argument. And, he certainly has not called it an attack, an assault, or anything like that. He's called it an altercation. I wonder why he uses that word. And again, we have the use of perpetrator. Now, here, what he's wanting to do is get across to us the fact that he thinks this was a robbery gone wrong and she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I've said his concept there in about 10 words. It was a robbery gone wrong. Missy was in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's taken him a lot more to say that, and it is full of stutters and stumbles and ums. If I'm not mistaken, he might have broke some glass. I don't know if any. The video shortly after the altercation, it's the opinion of the police department, the perpetrator. She walked in on robbery. That's just an opinion. That's not fact. It's really not smooth at all. He could have said that much, much more briefly there. So does he really believe that this was not a targeted attack? Because it's not smooth at all. We've got the thoughts that he thinks it's a he. He's talking very formally about it, and he just seems to be stumbling and not saying, I think it was a robbery. He's saying, if I'm not mistaken, it's not an opinion, it's just fact. I do wonder if he is as convinced as he would like us to believe that this was not a targeted attack on his wife. Something here interesting in the pattern of what he says. He says that the person that broke into the church broke some glass in this room looking for something. Broke some glass in this room looking for something. And Brandon, we saw it with the relationship. It was this and that and this and that. He repeats himself quite a lot. And it makes it sound like he's saying quite a lot. But really, he's just repeating himself. He's saying the exact same thing as he said before. And he just does not have the words to say these things in different ways. Finally, he says, needless to say, it's the opinion of the police department. Now, needless to say is a convincer. Yeah, needless to say, don't argue with this. It's needless to say. I don't need to say this. It's so simple, plain and obvious. But needless to say there. So that is him convincing us that is what the police department think. But is that what he thinks? And he also talks about the presence of my wife. Not the perpetrator didn't know my wife was there, but the presence of my wife. Again, some real formality in his language here. Has he just been spending a lot of time with police? This is the sort of talk that police would give. Yes, they did not know the presence of your wife, sir, but the formality really is in his language there. Here's some more from Brandon being asked, do you really think your wife wasn't targeted?
So you don't think she was targeted, or like that she was particularly...
In strictly my opinion, I don't think she was targeted. And to the best of my knowledge, when my wife arrived, there was no other vehicle in the parking lot, and otherwise it would have obviously drawn. My wife would have seen that. So as far as I know, and you have to confirm that with the police, there was no other vehicles on the property. But according to the timeline, the person came into the building and left the crime scene before the other campers showed up. So was there another vehicle, or did they have cameras outside that could confirm that? I don't know.
Got some real interesting thoughts on what he said there. First of all, he once again has said, don't take this as gospel. This is just me talking, strictly my opinion. I don't think she was targeted. I don't think he's saying, look, this is just my opinion here. To the best of my knowledge as well. So he's just talking to the best of his knowledge. I know, as far as I know, you'd have to confirm that with the police. I don't know. So once again, he's freely telling us he's only sharing his opinion. This is an interesting part. To the best of my knowledge, when my wife arrived, there was no other vehicle in the parking lot. Otherwise, it would obviously drawn, my wife would have seen that. What is he saying there? He's kind of saying, I think if my wife saw a car, she would have parked or gone in, but he doesn't say that. How does he know that? He doesn't say, I know she saw another car in the car park. She wouldn't park up. She wouldn't pull up. So has something gone on there? Is there some discussion that he's not letting us into here? But in his head, when my wife arrived, there was no other vehicle in the parking lot. My wife would have seen that. So why is he thinking that if there was a car there, his wife would have seen it? And he says, otherwise, it would have drawn. And then he changes his mind. He doesn't want to say drawn what? We don't know, and we can't guess because he doesn't say it. But I'm very interested in this discussion here. He pulls out of really saying what it is that he wanted to say, and he leaves me wondering what was going on there. Was your wife worried about personal security? Had that conversation gone down? And therefore you knew, again, this would kind of say she might have been targeted. She might have seen a lot of things or felt uneasy at sometimes. But he does not want to say that there. He says this person came into the building and left the crime scene before the other campers showed up. Do you spot what I spot there? The person came into the building and left the crime scene before the other campers showed up. Other campers? Which other camper? For there to be other campers, there must be at least one camper to have showed up first. For the other campers to show up later. Was Missy considered a camper? That would be one explanation for why that sentence is used. Or, look, I think outright he has some suspicion or some worries about some of the people in this camp that Missy was running. Does he suspect that this was the camper that turned up before the others, that is the person that broke in here and targeted his wife? But very, very interesting that the murderer came into the building and left the crime scene before the other campers showed up. I think that is really, really interesting. Also interesting is he's ruled out targeting, and he's ruled out that Missy was targeted based on the situation. So the reasons that he's ruled out that Missy was targeted are that he thinks this was a robbery gone wrong, that he's watched some of the things happen and he thinks this is a robbery, that this person came and went, and he just bases everything of why he doesn't think it was targeted on the situation. Doesn't talk about the fact that there was no threats to Missy, that Missy never felt threatened, or she was a lovely person, no one would do this, nothing like that whatsoever. The rules are targeting only on situation of that day, not in terms of anything that was happening in Missy's life, anyone she had suspicions about, anyone he had suspicions about either, only on what he's seen in that video and what the police have told him. Here's some more from Brandon.
Especially as this investigation goes on and police are relying on tips and help from the public, what should people keep in mind most about Missy?
I would have to say that Missy is unlike most people, is unlike any other spouse, wife, friend, mother. When you lose a loved one, all of those things fall into place, I don't know how to properly answer that question, but, all of you people here, you have kids, you're married. I mean, I know you're here for a story, but,
So he's asked, especially as this investigation goes on and police are relying on tips and helping the public, what should people keep in mind most about Missy? And what he says is, I would have to say that Missy is unlike most people, is unlike any other spouse, wife, friend, mother. Once again, this is flat. Missy is unlike most people. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, we all know that, so if we say that was unlike anything I've ever experienced before, that can mean it was bloomin' awful. It was one of the worst things that's ever happened to me. Or that was unlike anything I've ever experienced before. Could be an amazing thing. That was unlike anything I've ever experienced before. He uses this very neutral word with no judgment on it there to tell us what his dead wife was like. Unlike most people. And then just look at the ordering here. So he says, unlike most people, is unlike any other spouse, wife, friend, mother. So in order, and we tend to just say the thing that is most important, most critical, most apparent to us first, and go down in decreasing order. So spouse comes first. So great. That's being married is quite good. Wife is the exact same thing as a spouse there. So he said the same thing twice, once more. Just locked down, not great with getting the words out there. Spouse first, wife second, friend third, and mother last. I think real issues with the mothering skills or the way she was mothering there is last on his list as to what she is unlike. And then the rest of that answer is just full of the word you. You know, when you lose a loved one, all of those things fall into place, and I don't know how to properly answer that question, but and all of you people here, you have kids, you're married. I mean, I know you're here for a story, but it's just all about you. He's decided that he's done talking about himself and he's going to talk about you, which is the press that are in front of him there. But once more, he says, I don't know how to properly answer that question. So he's not giving us an answer. He's not giving us a very meaningful answer at all. But he's saying once more out loud, I don't know how to properly answer that question. And that's where we will leave the words and statements of Brandon Bevers. Conclusion time. And before I give you my conclusions, then if you're watching the live premiere of this on YouTube or if you're listening on Spotify, then there is a poll connected to this episode where you can vote on what you think is going on. So please get involved in that if you can. That's if you're watching the premiere on YouTube or if you're listening to this as a podcast on Spotify. It'd be really interesting to see what results come out. I might be able to share them on an upcoming episode as well. So my conclusions. Well, first of all, it's obvious from everything we've seen from this guy, he's really buttoned up. He's locked down. He's not sharing a lot. He's not going to let a lot out. Is he numb? He's very flat when he talks about his wife. He's very, very non-descriptive when he discusses her or what they do together. Is he numb? His wife has just been murdered, so he's entirely allowed to be numb, to be in shock. Has he been sedated? That also happens to people who have lost a loved one recently. Or is he creating some distancing there? I happen to think he's probably just a little bit numb for some reason. But listen, good things don't come easy to Brandon. He finds it extremely hard to say nice things about his wife, to talk about her or her life in glowing terms. Now that can be an issue. I do think that is because they have had a rocky relationship and were going through a rough patch at that time. Don't think he liked the new direction. Don't think he liked Camp Gladiator. I don't think he liked that transformation that changed his life, changed her from being a mother of his children into being someone who did things that were gratifying for herself. Not a reason to murder someone, though. Lots of people fall out in marriages and that doesn't end in murder. And he wants us to focus on it being a stranger, a robbery gone wrong. But I think I've seen from his words that he's really open to the fact that Missy could have been targeted. And also, I think he's a bit suspicious around Camp Gladiator. Was that something in his mind to do with the murder of his wife? But the question that you always want me to answer, was he involved? Listen, directly involved from the words I've looked at, I don't think so. It's just not in those words. And I spent hours poring over that interview because when he's buttoned down, when he's not saying much, it's very hard to get a steer on what's going on. But I think I've got one now. Look, he does keep a lot to himself. He does hide a lot. And that's why people think he's suspicious. I think that's why all those YouTube comments are saying, oh, he's quite suspicious, because he's keeping a lot hidden. but he's saying he's keeping a lot hidden, and he's telling us why he's hiding things. He says, I want my privacy. He says, I've got some issues that are personal. He says, I don't know how to answer that question. He says, I'm not going to talk to you about what I've talked to the police about. So every time he hides something, he really tells us why he's hiding it. He flags up, I am hiding something here. So I don't think that is that suspicious. Hours I spent looking at what he said. I didn't see deception or lies in anything he said at all. That's quite a big thing. Most of us can't go very far without some deception, even if it's kindly deception, but I didn't spot any deception or any lies in what he said there. I spotted a bit of dispassion, and that was a bit of a worry for me, but look, in the words that he said that we've analysed in that interview there, I don't think he was directly involved in the murder of his wife. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments on this platform as you can. Don't forget, if you're watching the premiere on YouTube or you're listening on Spotify, you can also vote in the poll. Let me know in the comments, so get in touch on social media as well. Also, if you've got anything you want to suggest that we cover, then do get in touch on social media or let me know in the comments here. This has taken hours to put together, so if you press the like button, that will help this hard work get out to a lot more people. Also, it's an unsolved murder. Lots of people like them, so if you know people like that, then do feel free to share this. And don't forget, if you want more from Brandon Bevers, a really interesting talk that he did, talking about being a suspect in the murder of his wife. If you want to see that analysed, you can become a member of the channel here on YouTube, or you can become a subscriber over on Spotify. You get exclusive content, you get episodes like this before everyone else as well. Neveratruerword.com is the website. On there, you'll get more podcast analysis, access to more video analysis of cases like this, and lots more words of people that are in the news. You can also sign up for the free monthly newsletter, neveratruerword.com. There's a new monthly newsletter due out soon, by the way, so do that sooner rather than later. Neveratruerword.com is the website address, and we'll see you for something new soon from Never a Truer Word.